Hi, it's Molly from the Semi-Retired MD team. Today's episode features a special guest couple, Rebecca and Scott Steenbergh, from our 2024 Fast Fire to Freedom Summit. You'll hear how Rebecca and Scott replaced their clinical income with real estate cash flow in just 2 years, while juggling full-time careers, parenting, and a cross-country move. They'll share why they chose short-term rentals, how the experience transformed them financially and personally, and how community and mentorship helped them overcome fears and limiting beliefs along the way. Whether you're just starting out or scaling your portfolio, this story is packed with inspiration and proof that financial freedom is possible for physicians. Let's dive in.
We're really excited to have Rebecca and Scott joining us today. Really excited to dive into their story. They're doing some great work with sober living. Rebecca and Scott, welcome. To get us started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So obviously I'm Rebecca and I am a veterinarian, and Scott has worked as a social worker for about 12 years. And he has worked pretty consistently in the field of substance use. And so he had this passion, long before we ever started, to do sober living homes. And so the time we took your course and we kind of moved into what are we going to do first? And so we decided to do a sober living home. And now we've progressed into several properties.
Awesome. So tell us, where did this idea first come from with sober living homes, Scott? Did you see it out there, or how did you know this is what you wanted to do? And how did you get Rebecca on board?
So, as Rebecca mentioned, I've worked in the addiction treatment space for a little while, and part of many of my roles have been in finding housing for people or helping people find. And so, I've had to be aware of that and learned about them, and actually visited and toured some sober living homes before, and really kind of, at least here in Southeast Michigan, thought they were like run down. And so when we got involved with semi-retired and learning about real estate and really kind of became all in on that concept, that idea came back to me like, oh, this could be like a niche way to start investing. And I think it was interesting because we could use single family homes and get good value, good cash on cash and all of that stuff. And so working on getting Rebecca involved was kind of a longer process, and really almost happened by accident. So it started with, we had this this short-term rental, this family cabin really is what it was. And it just kind of sat in the off season. And this was right before the pandemic happened. And it was sitting there and we were thinking maybe we could throw it on Airbnb and let's see what happens. And we didn't think anyone would want to go. It's in this very strange area of Michigan. And so we did, and it rented pretty consistently. And then into the pandemic, and through a weird set of circumstances, I was searching about opening an LLC related to the program or related to the house, and ended up finding your guys' crash course, and looked at the crash course, took the crash course kind of right away, connected to the podcast, and then I downloaded Rich Dad Poor Dad right after that, because I heard you guys talk about it. It just happened to be that. And then I was like, Rebecca, you got to listen to this. This is changing everything about the way I think about everything. And then it was kind of off from there. And that really led to us going to the summit that summer. And then she was all in right after that summit.
Yeah, tell us, Rebecca, what did you think when you came to, and how has your ideas about this shifted over time?
Well, like he said, with our first family cabin, we own it with my mom and sister. And so the three of us were like, no, this is never going to work. And, I don't know, we were just very hesitant. And then when we did that, obviously it blew up, and we were like, wow, this is really great. So then he brought the book. So I read the book with him, and, it's very inspiring and changed your opinion a lot. So then when we decided to do the summit, after that, it was just it just sort of happened, because you're so inspired after the summit, and then you have all these ideas. And so it just kind of all came together.
Cool. And what I hear is there was a really, you were very passionate about this community, but you were seeing that the quality of what people were putting out for them just really wasn't in line with what you thought should be there. And I think a lot of us in this community feel that way, even with a regular long-term rental, right? We see all these slumlords, they're running these places and they don't care about their tenants. And so this is just a really beautiful way to be able to build a business, but also contribute in a very meaningful way to a community that you really care about. I think that's really beautiful. So how did you even get started?
So, so basically the first home that we did after that family cabin is a short-term rental. And that was the one that kind of like we took Zero to Freedom. And then quickly after we did the Accelerating Wealth course, we had closed, I think early on in Accelerating Wealth on that short-term rental. And that one really unlocked everything, like the willingness to kind of like, I guess, just be all in and see where we can figure out how to make this work. And then we started to think about diversification, right? Like we had the 2 short-term rentals. Okay, so how do we make this work? And I think both of us agreed that multifamily seemed like a great option. And I don't know if it was that we just weren't in a position at the moment to do like a bigger, multifamily unit or something like that. And I just started thinking about sober living, like maybe we could do this, and brought the idea up to her. And I think pretty quickly you were on board, if I remember.
Yeah.
Like, because if you sit down and run the numbers, like you guys taught us the cash on cash, and you sit down and you run the numbers and you're like, whoa, I think this could really be something. And I think that added with, the potential to be helpful and like have it have meaning, was really kind of a push for us as well. So the nuts and bolts of that, as far as like getting it filled and stuff with our end, happens to be really easy just because I work in that space. So that's like secondary for what I do. I've developed those relationships over time, and yeah, so that's really
For somebody who's completely new to sober living, can you explain what it is? And can you give us a sense of what kind of houses people were looking for to be able to have a sober living facility?
Sure.
So pretty commonly people go into like a somewhat longer term. I mean, it could be like as simple as like 15 days or 30 in a residential treatment. And then a lot of times they're discharged and they, might go back to their family homes, or might go back to the space that's not very, conducive to like being sober. So a lot of them, there's well-known sober homes like in our area, and, that a lot of the treatment centers send their clients to. But again, as Scott said, we thought we could do it a little better, a little nicer. So he is involved with all these different treatment centers, and so they just refer their clients, and we accept them.
And so basically it's like communal living in some ways, shared housing, right? And really focuses on the sense of community to foster and help people get through transitioning out of substance use treatment, get into early recovery, and turn their lives around. And that becomes really, really effective to be able to have people around you. And so basically it's a place that you can go and you can rent a room. There are structured rules. You have to abide by a curfew. You have to submit to random urine screens and things like that. That structure is there to kind of help guide people in the early stages of recovery. And that's really all it is.
What are, just to give people a sense of what these other options are like, when you say you wanted to make yours better and nicer, like what is the contrast there? What are some of these homes like? Like what are the existing facilities providing compared to what you're providing?
Yeah, and I don't want to drag all of sober livings through the mud. There are places throughout the country that are beautiful, and I mean you can find these in Malibu, and they're like really, really high-end homes, and you can obviously find that. Where we're at in Southeast Michigan, traditional single-family homes in a not very nice neighborhood that are pretty run down, not really renovated in any significant way. And I remember one of our clients coming and saying, like, hey, the one house I had lived in before has had the same couch since I was there. I was there in 2015. And I was like, wow, you think about the wear and tear on furniture over time. Like that's, so stuff like that. We really thought if I'm going to recommend somebody goes there, like if I had to look somebody's mother in their eyes or their family in their eyes and say, this is a good place for your child to go, or this is a good place for your family member to go, I would want it to be somewhere that I think I would feel comfortable to enter, and I could feel like it was relaxing. Because those things are really important for people in the early stages of trying to turn their life around. Like if we can just kind of make things easier that way, that's really what we thought about. So just simple things like having nice furniture, having it freshly renovated and stuff like that.
I remember we had Jamie Litvak come in a couple years ago in the summit, and she was talking about her sober living facility in Vegas, and it's a multifamily, small multifamily. And she actually has the company come in and they do all of this stuff for the community, and she just provides the housing. So is that similar to what you're doing, or are you doing more for besides just being the landlord for the property?
So for us, we're doing more of that, right? And providing some of the management and oversight. And that's why if we get into the cash on cash, you'll see we have 0 on the management side. And there are varying ways to do it. So like a good example of that being that on the recent property we purchased, we partnered with actually my sister and brother-in-law, and who we're very good friends with, and they were trying to get into this sort of thing. And so basically we can do the management side, and they are basically silent investors who are able to make passive gains and stuff like that. So
Very cool. So how did you choose the types of properties? Like, were there specific things you were looking for?
yeah, I think for us, it doesn't have to be this way. We have really targeted what I call unicorn homes, in the sense of like they're going to be higher bedroom, higher bathroom, or the potential for higher bedroom, and maybe you could add bathrooms or add a bedroom or something like that, to maximize the capacity, but in a way that also allows for comfortability, if you will. So there's enough space and stuff like that.
Because
Yeah.
you could do this with a very small home, but ours just, our model seems to be like a 5.2, at least 5.4, just something along those lines.
Yeah, and I do want to call out that we have supported living, and one of the best models we found is a duplex with high numbers of bedrooms and bathrooms on each side, because that even allows for more efficiency in one space, and they rent by the room as well. So you do want to have a lot of bedrooms, but you also want to have a lot of bathrooms, because you want people to have their individual spaces, and enough living space for them to be able to gather too. We had another supported living place that was also a duplex, and we put 2 bedrooms downstairs, but we didn't have enough living room space, and so the supported living company basically asked us to take one of the bedrooms and make it an extra living room for the people. So I think this is really important for people to hear, that this is not just in sober living, but also supported living, anything where you're renting by the room, to make sure that you have a maximum number of bedrooms. And in supported living, they had a limit. So I'm curious to hear if they have that in sober living as well. And then a lot of bathrooms, and make sure you have that social space.
So as far as limits, you're talking about in reference to like how many humans you can have in a space. So our rules that we're abiding by are 6 people per bathroom, and then 6 people per refrigerator as well. And I think that's kind of like maxing it out quite a bit on the refrigerator space. We try to provide more ample space, but 6 people per bathroom. And then the bedroom requirement is based on square footage. So it's 50 square foot per person is what we have to abide by.
Okay, and then yeah, you kind of touched on this, but so there are rules, it sounds like, for how many people per square foot, and are there any other kind of guidelines?
So with sober living specifically, it's really kind of this unique animal. It operates and is protected under single family use. So other than the Americans with Disability Act guidelines and whatever they say, that's really what we have to abide under. So yeah, that's
So the homes do have to be like ADA compliant?
yes. Well, ADA compliant in the sense of square footage, but they don't have to be accessible for handicap use or anything like that.
Okay.
Okay. And then can we kind of circle back to kind of like operating these? Because, I would think that a lot of people in our community might hesitate to do the model where they're actually providing even some of the, sounds like you're even maybe providing some of the management, right? Whereas the other model that you discussed with like the management, the interactions, intake, all that stuff was being handled by somebody else who was the company that was renting the home, right? And so can you kind of talk to us a little bit more about this, like the hands-on and what you guys are doing like on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. I'm going to defer to Rebecca because she does a lot of it.
So For our homes, I mean, we actually don't spend that much time in the home, but certainly we're in contact with the clients that live there, and there's a house manager for each of the homes. So that person is kind of like the go-to liaison between us and the house. I would say like day to day, there's not that much oversight. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are issues that come up all the time and, have to be handled like at that moment, or, somebody needs to be escorted out, or just whatever the case may be. But as a whole, it's not too intensive. We provide like toiletry things like, toilet paper, paper towel, kind of like all those things that everybody in the house uses. So that's just like a small piece where, when they're running out, somebody has to let us know. They cut their own grass and like maintain the lawn and, all the landscaping, shoveling. So the house pretty much takes care of itself as long as they're being managed well. Scott does a lot more of the managing of the people per se, because he's, a therapist. And so, I mean, I think he kind of handles like the personalities and the issues that arise with the people, but I more handle like, the utilities and kind of all the other stuff.
And I would say the biggest part, I think, is just client intake and discharge. So getting a referral from a treatment center, being able to screen them and make sure that things make sense from that person. And then, when people are getting ready to leave, and making sure the space is prepped after they've left and is ready for a new person and stuff like that. Those are the biggest things. And I think that the way that we do it, if you get really good house management, like the person who's boots on the ground, then it makes life much easier. If not, you can take that stuff on yourself, and probably, I mean, that's a full-time job for sure. So we try not to do all of that.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you is house managers. Are you going out and you hiring these individuals and you're doing feedback and kind of making sure they do their job, or is there some other way to do this?
So you can do it that way for sure. And I've seen like I'm part of a Facebook group that's just sober living resources. And you'll see people from time to time say, hey, I'm looking for a house manager in Southern California, whatever, here's the requirements. And you might be able to find them that way. We got the first one we kind of did organically, and that was quite a learning experience to get someone who was like really new. And we thought, well, you seem to have good leadership qualities. Let's try this out. And it took a little while to kind of make things work there. With our second home, and Rebecca likes to take credit almost as like this is her home versus my home. We had someone that we identified pretty right away who like had management experience, and he'd worked like for the NSA and some things like that. And so he was a good fit, and that home is perfect. I want to knock on wood here, but we have like almost no problems with that home. It operates very well.
How do you compensate the property manager or the house manager?
We give them a reduced rate. We charge by the week. And so they get a reduced rate, to kind of handle that. If they're good enough, or like it works out well enough, potentially a lot of homes have them live for free. So they live for free and then, just do that as their compensation.
Yeah, some places will pay as well. It just depends on how much. Like I have another friend who does this, and he's got the managers taking on all of the stuff that I've been doing as far as like screening from treatment centers. So that guy is compensated. He gets a free room, and then I don't know exactly how much, but a small amount of money for what he does.
Okay, so then in your situation, you have a reduced rent. So when you buy a place, you pretty much have to make sure you have a room for this person. Is that right?
Yeah,
Yes.
we try to do that. Give them their own space. It's kind of like that's one of the incentives too of like taking on the management role. And then the idea being that as people are coming through the program and staying, that we'd have like kind of an on-deck person who's ready when that manager is ready to take off, and he would be being groomed to take over that position.
Okay, so generally the manager was part of the program. Is that?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be that way in sober living models. It is in ours. We do it that way.
Okay. And then can you tell us a little bit about kind of the intake and discharge, kind of what's involved with that?
Sure. As far as like screening for who would be appropriate and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we had to do is come up with like the structure of the home and the programs and rules and stuff like that. And so we did that, and we actually, I think, talked with the woman you mentioned earlier in the interview, and I forgot her name. We talked to her a little bit about it. We talked to another EB who's in Vegas doing a similar thing. And so we looked at some different programs. I have some friends that run these, and we adopted our own. And then once we did that, it really became like just some simple questions I want to know about as far as like what medications a person's taking, their history as far as mental health concerns and things like that. Are they safe? Do they have a history of violence? We looked for that stuff. And then their willingness to kind of follow these rules. And that's really the biggest thing. And if they have that willingness to follow the rules and it sounds like it's going to be a big fit. So for me personally, that's why I like to talk to them, because I do the work that I do. I feel like I get a good understanding when I hear someone's voice and they're answering these questions, that I can kind of weed people out that I think might not be a good fit for what we're doing. But, like I said, other programs can, have other people do that sort of thing. But yeah, those are the main questions. And assuming they're a good fit, we, invite them to move in. And a lot of the process beyond that screening is really automated. We have the house manager meet them there, go through the rules, and help them get unpacked and do all the processes that happen when they first get there.
Last question before we go back into your story of your building your portfolio. What about liability? I'm sure you think a lot about that if you're managing these places. So can you talk about insurance, and presume you have kind of house insurance, but then you have this additional insurance, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so we actually are part of and connected to the Michigan Association of Recovery Residences. There's a national cohort, the National Alliance on Recovery Residences. And you have to have a specific kind of insurance for it. Most carriers won't, they're like, no way. So, but they turned us on to one who knows exactly what you have to have. So it's really just the dwelling has to be insured, and there has to be a liability policy on top. And then of course we follow the same structure that you guys recommend as far as having it in an LLC with a land trust and that whole thing that we have set up that way.
Well, that might have been your last question, but I have a couple more questions.
Oh.
So I'm curious, what is the funding like? So where does the funding come from? Do they pay out of pocket, or are they getting funding from somebody?
Want to take that one?
So there is a local nonprofit organization that will fund them for 1 to 2 weeks, sometimes 3, depending on the circumstances. But essentially, they're all just self-pay clients that, part of our guidelines are that they have to get a job within the first week or 2. So, we work with them a little bit in the beginning if that's not feasible, or, they're a little delayed or things like that. But aside from that little scholarship that they get, it's pretty much them on their own.
Yeah, with our program, fee for service, although we do have a grant program the third property that we actually closed on, where we're going to be connected with a local government agency who will provide grant funding for women and women with children, pregnant women. And so they can, through the treatment center, apply for that funding. I think it covers the first 60 days of their housing that way. And we actually recently just learned of another grant that we're going to be going after that will allow us a certain amount of money to just help people with that sort of thing if they have a gap in employment or needed some funds. So it's specific for rent or utilities.
And then what is the average length of stay then for your tenants?
So I don't know that I've worked out numbers on an average for us. I know that some programs will say like 30 from 30 to 90 days. Our specific focus has always been however long you need the bed. My commitment to you, or our commitment to you, is it's yours. We have guys that have been at that first house that we opened over a year at this point, and for whatever reason in their life it fits and they want to stay. And that's leaning towards house management and stuff like that. I would say probably around 6 months is a good average.
Okay, so it's not as sounded like originally like the turnover was going to be pretty high, but if you're saying that there are people that stay longer, 6 months, a year.
Yeah, I would say so. We have at the one house that we have now, we've got 2 guys that have been there a year. Most everybody else is between 6 and 10 months besides that.
Okay, and they're self-paying, they have their own jobs.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
So let's talk about your first property and how you found it and how you set it up.
Of course, we connected with an agent and started to kind of see these deals come through, and we're looking, and we were very wishy-washy. I'll be totally honest with this single family home. It took us almost like 8 or 9 months to find one. And I think when we found one, it was almost like it found us. I'll say that I wasn't even totally sold on it, even after we put the offer in and got it accepted. Like I had a harder time seeing the hidden value and stuff like that. But the house itself is really perfect. So the biggest reason that we chose it is that it was this kind of odd 5-bedroom house. It was 5 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. And it was like, well, that works for numbers very well. And then we saw like some potential when we started to get into it. We could renovate the basement, we could add a bathroom, we could do this. And then when you started to see how you could potentially get the numbers up, and then we could increase the equity in the home and all of that stuff, that's really what sold us on it.
Can you talk to us about resale though? When you're, do you think that these houses are attractive for a home buyer who's buying this property in the future?
I would think for ours, absolutely. I don't see that there's, I mean, it would be a big family. It'd be kind of a unique property, I would say, but I think it would be fine. Some of them that I've seen, maybe not so much, depending on what's going on. Like it's got to be a unique use. So the second one that we bought, I know was used as a group home before ours, and that was part of why it fits so well. It was like, oh, this is that specific kind of house.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm really excited to kind of dive into these properties. That first home, especially, we're going to kind of show you a few before and what you've done to the place and what you the hidden value you tapped into in the basement. So I'm really excited to look at that as well as the numbers, right? I don't want to forget about the numbers. The numbers are pretty amazing. But I'm curious now you've done these, sounds like you're on your 3rd sober living home. Is that right?
Yes.
So kind of what's next? So like, what are you thinking about doing next? Are you thinking about buying more of these homes? Are you thinking about scaling up, going back to short-term rentals?
Well, we just looked at a property yesterday that potentially will be 30 beds. And like a much larger facility. So we're kind of in the process of, kind of figuring that out, seeing if it works for us. But that's kind of where we're headed. I mean, we've talked about other single family homes with the smaller numbers and things like that, but kind of whatever pops up, we'll take a look at and see where we should go.
Wow. Can you tell us a little bit about this property? Is it like a multi-family property or a facility, or is it a huge single family home?
So it's actually a commercial property that was operating as a sober living home. I think it shut down right around the pandemic time, and I had known the operator just from working in treatment and stuff like that. And it's this unique thing where you can't really, I mean, they are marketing it commercial as office space. You'd have to come in and do some renovations. I think it was a lawyer's office, but at some point in time, it was a residential home. It's this old Tudor from whatever year, and it's got a ton of character. It's a really cool property, and it's just got a lot of space. And he set it up in the way that it's perfect. Like everything is done for us, that we would just have to come in and paint and furnish. And part of the reason that we started entertaining it was this idea with this grant thing. And because I think even last week or the week before said, I think we should go, like, let's look at a multifamily as maybe a small apartment complex where we could have people step down out of the structured living. Like, hey, you're now, you've lived here a year and a half. Why don't you go on and, here's an opportunity for an apartment or something like that, and really just sort of diversify. And then this came along and it was like, okay, I think this is where we're going, sort of thing.
Are the rules any different for a property of this size compared to the homes that you've already set up?
As far as I know, not necessarily. So the things to consider are just zoning ordinances within townships, and we've really learned a lot about all that stuff. You cannot discriminate against this kind of property, essentially, but you have to learn how to navigate that if you start to get pushback or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really the biggest thing, is just to be able to figure out whether you're gonna get any pushback in that way. This particular property is in an industrial zone, so there's really no neighbors. There's like a granite place next door or something like that, like back. So yeah, it's about the same.
Yeah, I really love that. I know that there are people also buying short-term rentals that are commercially zoned, in spaces that they can't have short-term rentals in residential areas. And so I think this is such a good use for these office spaces and these more the commercial spaces that are don't have tenants anymore and maybe have lost some value, but you can use them, you can repurpose them. It's really cool.
Mhm.
And then, I definitely wanted people to hear, and I know it's different per market, but like if you were to go sell one of your properties to an investor, with all these tenants in place, I presume you'd get a higher price than if you just sold it as a long-term rental. So especially because of all the additional cash coming in. So can you talk a little bit about that? Have you seen people selling their sober livings and what kind of upcharge they're getting? Because I remember back in the day, like, gosh, it must have been 2017, we were looking at sober living in Oklahoma City. And I remember there was a significant upcharge just
You mean
because.
the prices were inflated?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
So the one experience that we have with it is there was a local operator who I think she's got 4 or 5 homes, and she was interested in the idea. She was saying, "Hey, look, I'm getting ready to retire and I want out." And she sent me these homes, and then she wanted like $1 million for these 4 homes. And we were just both kind of looked at each other. I had seen something in a local real estate investing thing on Facebook that we have where you could buy 12 single family homes for less, in the area. And I was like, I don't know why she thinks that. But I think here's the deal, that she has these systems in place and she's made these connections with referrals. And so she can kind of guarantee a higher cash on cash. In her particular one, she does have government contracts and they pay like a little bit more per day for those. And I think that's where she's going with it. We haven't discussed it much further than looking at what she said. But other than that, I don't know that I've heard of any.
Yeah. I mean, in our experience from what we've seen, it was definitely higher price than if you just bought a long-term rental of the same size. And I think that what you pointed out, which is she had assets, she had these contracts, she had the systems and processes. And so as much as you can get assets for your properties when you go to sell them, and if you can sell them in that package, you might be able to sell them at even a higher price, right? Because somebody's buying all this cash and it's all created already, kind of like assisted adult family homes, right?
Yeah, I wanted to distinguish though between being a buyer of these properties and setting up a sober living facility versus being the seller. And so as a buyer, ideally you're buying it low, right? That's kind of.
And you're buying it not set up so that
Right.
you can force appreciation and turn it into this, right?
Right.
Because that is a form of forced appreciation too.
Right. And I think that's the key, is that what you guys are doing is you're forcing that appreciation. You're creating the value by having those systems in place. And therefore, maybe, just maybe, when you go to sell, you might have a buyer who's willing to pay for those systems and the cash flow that you're generating from these properties.
Yeah. And I would argue that with supported living too. I mean, we've had supported living in one of our properties for probably 5 or 6 years now, and that's 40% cash and cash return. When we go to sell it, I would put it out there for a higher price and see what happens, and see if we can find an investor, who wants to have this whole package delivered to them.
Yeah.
So cool, guys. Awesome. What would you say to somebody who wants to follow in your footsteps? What kind of advice would you give to them?
I don't know if this differs from what Rebecca says. I think the biggest thing to figure out for yourself would be how much of a management role you want to have in it. And then to just start immersing yourself in the world of sober living, learn about the National Alliance and all they have a ton of resources that can be helpful. So there are places you can learn, and just learn as much as you can. And then I would say maybe trust it's going to be a learning process even on top of that.
I would say the same thing. I mean, the first house was a huge learning curve, but now, it hasn't been that long and we're starting our third, and I feel like we know what we're doing now, but it took a while. And I mean, he knows a lot about the field, and like, we reached out to Mar a lot, and like they'll answer any questions and help you along, but still you have to do it yourself. And we decided to fully manage, and it's been a roller coaster, but I mean, I think we're in a good shape now.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for your time. I know we asked you a billion questions about this, but I know that a lot of people attending the conference will be so interested in hearing about what you did and inspired by what you guys have done. Thank you.